session. The Honorable Order Waters, Steve Marino.
Good morning. Please be seated. Let me see Councilor Sybar.
With regard to the other case.
Okay, you just joined in the earlier objection.
But my recollection of the objection, which was the sidebar Tuesday evening, was my objection was that he began testifying about procedures for applying for search warrants. And immediately there was something on the board, which I now have in my hand. And it was talking about search warrants. That was my intent of election.
The objection was not real grounds. It's not the most objection. Search warrant was not the most objection. The project of the warrant is considered the A1 tax. Simply to do search warrant procedure. So it is
And your objection is what?
I understood, read into the record, the qualifying
we're looking at the foundational qualifications.
Okay, let's bring the jury in, please. Have the witness take the stand. Good morning. Please be seated. Okay, we're ready to proceed. As you recall, Agent Agustin is on the stand on direct examination. So our program for the day will be here until 4:30. Let's proceed, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. Agent Augustine, when we broke last Tuesday, we were talking about your training, experience, and qualifications, and that's where I'd like to pick up this morning, okay?
Okay.
We were talking about the search warrants. You've participated in applying for search warrants.
I have, yes.
And I believe we're in the process of you were giving a brief description of how an agent goes about getting a search warrant. Just very briefly
Right.
what the process is.
Right. Basically, when you believe you have probable cause to search a particular place or a particular person, you prepare an affidavit of probable cause, which is then submitted to a court, and the judge looks at it. If he believes that there is sufficient probable cause to search that location for that evidence, then he approves the search warrant, and then you can go ahead and conduct the search.
And have you participated, in your experience as an FBI agent, have you participated in preparation and applications for search warrants?
I have, yes.
what's your best guess about in your career? How many times have you done that?
Approximately half a dozen times, 6 or 10 times.
Now, in the process of preparing your search warrant affidavit, have you had occasion to include in your probable cause analysis the interpretation of intercepted and recorded conversations that relate to organized crime and racketeering activity, specifically gambling and sports bookmaking?
Yes, as part of the probable cause of the application, yes.
And have those search warrants applications been approved by the magistrate court?
They have, yes.
Now, in the course of your work as an FBI agent, have you also had occasion to work with informants?
Yes,
You know, how often have you done that?
almost continuously since I've been an agent.
And have you worked with informants that have provided you information about various criminal activities?
Yes, I have.
And does that include information about organized crime activity, racketeering activity, and particularly sports gambling and sports bookmaking?
Yes,
And you've interviewed these informants, correct?
I have.
And have, in the course of your interviewing in them and debriefing informants, have you obtained information about the meaning of specific or particular words that are used in the context of sports gambling and sports bookmaking?
Yes, they've informed me and basically educated me over the years as to what different terms mean, specifically in terms of sports betting, bookmaking.
You also worked with cooperating witnesses?
Yes,
We've heard a lot of testimony about cooperating witnesses. That's essentially somebody who comes in and agrees to work with the FBI, correct?
agrees to actively participate in the investigation either by wearing a wire, recording conversations, and testifying.
Are you familiar with the term cooperating defendant?
I am, yes.
Is that different from a cooperating witness?
A cooperating defendant, yes, is a person who's been charged as part of the case and decides to plead guilty to the charges and assist with the investigation, assist the government's case.
In the course of your work as an FBI agent, have you had the opportunity to debrief numerous cooperating witnesses and cooperating defendants?
I have, yes.
And have they provided you information about racketeering activities, particularly gambling and sports bookmaking?
Yes.
And as a result of that work, have they provided you information about the meaning and interpretation of particular words that are used in the context of gambling and sports bookmaking?
Yes.
And in doing that, working with cooperating witnesses, have you also reviewed consensual recordings?
And many of them, yes.
We played a number of consensual recordings in this courtroom, correct?
Yes, we have.
That's a conversation that a cooperating witness makes through his consent to record, correct?
Correct.
And in reviewing those consensual recordings, have you gained additional insight and information about the meaning of particular words in the context of sports gambling and sports bookmaking?
Yes, I have. Typically, when a cooperating witness is speaking about sports bookmaking, especially over the telephone, they'll use cryptic words or coded words so that they're not explicitly talking about illegal activities.
And have you also testified before the grand jury?
Yes, I have.
What's your best estimate about how many times you've testified before the grand jury?
I'd say probably at least 20 times.
And in your testimony before the grand jury, have you had occasion to testify regarding the meaning and interpretation of words and phrases that are used in the particular context of sports gambling and sports bookmaking?
Yes, I have.
Now, based upon all the training and experience that you've described, are you familiar with certain code words and expressions and words and phrases that have a particular meaning in connection with racketeering activity, specifically gambling and sports bookmaking?
Yes.
And as a result of your training and experience and qualifications, are you able to interpret the meaning of code words and phrases and cryptic expressions that have a particular meaning within the context of racketeering activity, specifically sports gambling and sports bookmaking?
I believe so, yes.
Now, in the course of your investigative work, have you also encountered certain nicknames and references to certain places that relate to targets of your investigation?
This specific investigation, yes.
And as a result of your information you've heard in this courtroom and your experience in the investigation, are you able to identify some of the references to nicknames and places?
Yes, I am.
You know, at this time, the government moves to qualify Agent Augustine as an expert in the interpretation of code words and cryptic expressions and words and phrases that have a particular meaning within the context of racketeering activity, specifically sports gambling and sports bookmaking, and specifically with the in connection with the interpretation and analysis of recorded conversations relating to sports gambling and sports bookmaking that were obtained in the course of this investigation.
Whittier?
Judge, I don't believe so.
Okay.
Thank you, Judge.
Any objection?
I have no objection, Judge.
Okay.
Same objection raised at sidebar. Your Honor.
Okay, noted. The court will qualify the witness to testify by way of opinion in the interpretation of code words and cryptic expressions, specifically and especially as it relates to the use of sports and gambling terms in the course of this investigation.
Thank you. May I
Yes,
proceed?
proceed, please.
Thank you. Agent Augustine, do you know an individual named Peter Albo?
Yes, I do.
And how do you know Peter Albo?
Peter Albo is a cooperating witness, became a government cooperating witness in approximately January of 2002, at which point I began working with him.
Now, without telling the jury specifically what Peter Albo said to you, when did he contact the FBI?
He contacted the FBI in January of 2002, and we met for the first time and began our relationship.
Now, without telling exactly what Mr. Albo said to you, did he express some concerns at that time?
He did. My understanding was there was a problem, and that's the reason for contacting us.
Now, as a result of that contact, did the FBI do anything?
We did. At that time, we had already had a racketeering investigation in progress. Mr. Albo's cooperation enabled us to explore some additional avenues of that investigation to further collect some evidence against subjects of that investigation. So we began speaking with him, talking about what he would be able to do for the government in terms of its investigation, and likewise what we would be able to do for him in return.
Now, what did Mr. Albo agree to do anything in connection with your investigation?
He agreed to provide us with information, both historical and current information about people he was dealing with. He agreed to record conversations both on the telephone and in person by wearing a body wire, and he agreed to eventually testify at trial.
And did he, in fact, going forward, did he record conversations with some of the targets of your investigation?
He did, beginning in January of 2002, continuing for several years afterwards.
At the time Mr. Albo contacted you, did he have any open criminal charges?
No, he didn't.
Did he have a plea agreement with the government or the state or anybody like that?
No, he did not.
So he was not, his cooperation wasn't related to working off some type of criminal sentence, was it?
No, it was not. He was not under any charges or any current legal process.
Now, you said the FBI agreed to do something for Peter Albo. What did the FBI agree to do for Peter Albo?
To assist him with paying off a sports bookmaking debt that he had incurred to the South Philly mob.
Was that part of the investigative work? Was that part of the investigative work that you were going to do with that you did with Mr. Albo?
Yes, it was.
And did you provide money to Mr. Albo to pay down the sports debt?
Yes, we did, both to Mr. Albo and then indirectly through an undercover agent, Agent Stone, also known as Vinny, who was introduced to the investigation by Mr. Albo.
Yes. Was that you testified earlier that you saw an opportunity to do some investigative work? Was one of the things that you decided to do through the cooperation of Peter Albo was to introduce the undercover agent who testified before you, Jay Stone, as introduce him as Vinny, the sports gambler?
Yes, Mr. Albo had already come up with a scenario in which it would be very easy for us to introduce an undercover agent to the persons that Albo was dealing with in South Philadelphia. Agent Stone was available and was qualified to do the role of Vinny. We spoke to Agent Stone, spoke to Mr. Albo. We had a couple of meetings about the proposed scenario, and it looked like it was workable, and Agent Stone agreed to do it. And I believe it was February of 2002, Albo introduced Agent Stone to Mr. Badalini and others.
Now, you mentioned in the initial meeting, Mr. Albo expressed some concerns to you, and then you testified that the FBI provided funds to pay down his debt. Was that in relation to one of the concerns he expressed to you, the providing of funds to pay a debt that he owed to someone?
His primary concern, yes.
Did he have any other concerns that required the FBI to address them?
His personal security. We agreed to eventually relocate him for his personal safety and to provide any other type of security measures that would, make him give him a level of comfort in the meantime until such time as he was relocated out of the area.
And did the FBI provide security services for his personal residence?
We did. We assisted him with putting in a home security system, both at his home and also one at his place of work.
And was he provided with funds to relocate?
Yes, he was.
Relocation purposes?
Yes.
Was he also provided expense money for telephone bills and travel expenses and things like that?
Yes, he was. Periodic expenses for bills, various things that would come up. Occasionally he would participate in card games with various subjects of the investigation. We'd give him expense money to participate in those card games and things of that nature.
And was he also provided financial compensation in terms of personal service payments for the time he spent working with the FBI?
He was. I think I gave him periodically just a few $100s at a time, maybe every couple of months.
And did he receive, at one point, did he receive some assistance with the FBI in connection with maintaining his living arrangements because of some financial distress he was in?
Right. He was going through some type of bankruptcy, and he was behind on his mortgage payments, or his bankruptcy installment payments. So we gave him, I think, in the area of $4,000, maybe a little more than $4,000 to catch up on his bankruptcy.
Now, you testified Mr. Albo did record conversations. He consented to record those on behalf of the FBI?
He did. He gave us verbal consent, basically at our first meeting, and then he executed a couple of consent forms, which we have at the FBI.
And were you the supervising agent when Mr. Albo was making those recordings during the calendar year 2002?
I was, yes.
And have you had the opportunity to review those tape recordings that he made?
I have, yes.
And have you reviewed transcripts that relate to those recordings?
Yes, I have.
Are the recordings and the transcripts that you've reviewed that were made by Mr. Peter Albo, to your knowledge, are they accurate?
Yes, they are.
At this time, we would like to play for the jury a number of recordings. And the first recording, for the record, it is a recording dated January 18th.
Excuse me a minute. Is there an instruction that you wish to have provided concerning Mr. Albo?
Yes.
Okay. The conversations, some of them are going to involve Mr. Peter Albo, who you have just heard about him. The evidence of the conversation of Mr. Albo is being admitted solely to provide context to this conversation, not for the truth of the matter. So there are two sides to the conversation. The conversation, one speaker has been introduced for the truth of the matter. Mr. Albo, who is the other speaker, that is not being introduced for the truth of the matter. Okay? Yes, proceed.
Thank you. Back to the tapes. These transcripts will be in Book 1, and they begin with tab 32. And the first conversation we're going to play is a conversation, for the record, is dated January 18th, 2002, beginning at approximately 11:23 a.m. And this conversation will be identified as Government Exhibit 1-32. And the transcript that corresponds to this conversation is identified as Government Exhibit 1-32A. And that transcript is behind tab 32 in transcript book number 1. Do you have that in front of you, Agent?
I do.
Okay.
I need to talk to him and tell him that I got, what do you call it? I got
Agent Augustine, can you identify the speakers on that conversation?
Yes, Peter Albo and Gary Badalini.
Okay, and are the voices correctly attributed in the transcript that we read along with that conversation?
They are.
Now, this conversation was recorded on January 8, 2002, correct?
January 18th, yes.
January 18th. And this was after you had your initial meeting where Mr. Albo came to you and expressed some concerns, correct?
Objection to the leading, Your Honor.
Overrule, that's a background question.
This is approximately 2 days after our first meeting.
Now, at this time, the government will play the tape recording identified as Government Exhibit 1-33. For the record, this is a conversation also dated January 18th, 2002, at approximately 1:15 p.m. The transcript is identified as Government Exhibit 1-33A, and that's behind tab 33. Do you have that, Agent?
I do.
Okay. And we play that recording?
Yes, yes. I mean, I have that right now. I mean, I ain't gonna fucking call you and make promises that I can't keep. You know what I mean? If you want to tax the other amount of money, then let them do that. But you already did. You told me you won't leave me alone and guarantee us $10,000 on Friday before you write it down. Okay, Garrett, listen to me. The bank told me when I went to the bank that I would be able to get the loan. When I went to go find out about the loan I'm supposed to pick up today, they told me something came back late on my credit. I took every dime that I had in the bank out. You know what I mean? To show good faith, Garrett. You know what I mean? I'm trying to show good faith. I'm not saying, oh, fuck it, well, let them do what they got to do and everything else. I'm trying to show good faith over here, and I'm telling you, I can keep 26 fucking 50 today, which is owed for the swap the week before that. Then the 13 then the also owed, I'll try to minus the percentage, which is supposed to be 11,000, right? After the percentages all come up, Garrett. Well, I mean, I'll give $1,000 a week. And that's showing good faith, Garrett, keep the money in them. And if they want to tax that on top of that, then don't let them do that. But I mean, I'm keep going up against the wall where I can't do anything. You want me to go pick up the bank? I'll fucking do that if I have to. I mean, I'm not trying to put this pressure on you, and I know it's not on you, it's on me. You know what I mean? But at the same time, there's like nobody down here helping me, Garrett. And that's not how it's supposed to be worked out. You know what I mean? I'm supposed to. I don't want to get into all that fucking shit again, homie. You're costing me more money than I ever fucking made. All right, whatever, guys. Whatever. No, don't give me whatever, Pete. Don't give me whatever. The thing is, you told me to leave me the fuck alone. You have the 10,000 up on Friday. Guaranteed you're coming. Now you're coming down with 2,600. And you're telling me to give me $1,000 a week until it straightens out. That's the best I can do, guy. I couldn't get the 10,000. And I can't go to my mother to get the money because she's fucking refied her house already. My mother refied her house already, and I can't go to her. You want me to go Louis up and see what he has to say? Right the fuck here, Pete. Louis sitting right here. Well, can I talk to him? It's not the point. Don't you understand we got people to pay tonight? It's a fucking bad year. You just don't want to understand it's a bad year. I'm not. Hey, now you said we don't give you help. I drove way down to Summer Point to an empty apartment. Well, it wasn't empty, Garrett. It wasn't empty. I mean, it's not my fault. What? You haven't found this guy yet. I went to Tuckerton. I went to Tucker to look for him. I have a clue where he might be from Tucker, from the guy from at work. From his got parents in Tucker. You can't put together $5,000 into that. I just took out my fucking kids' money, Garrett. I just took out my kids' money out of the fucking bank and I had to put away for that. I got $2,650 right now. I mean, ain't that showing something, Garrett? It's showing jack balls what it's showing. You told me to give you till Friday. We get a fuck all a week. You have to $10,000 up. And I'm telling you what happened. I'm not bullshit. I'm telling you you're going to get $1,000 a week. Where the fuck are you going to get $1,000 a week? I got $1,000 a week. I'll be able to do it. I'm not going to say
Agent Augustine, are you able to identify the voices in that recording?
Yes, Peter Albo and Gary Badalini.
Now, this conversation was recorded on January 18th, 2002. Let me call your attention to, well, let me ask you this first. Page 2 of the transcript, calling your attention to lines 17 and 18. Mr. Alba says, "You want me to call Louis up and see what he has to say?" And Mr. Badalini says, "Louis sitting right the F here." Are you able to identify who the reference to Louis is in that portion of the conversation?
Louis Beretta.
Now, calling your attention to page 3, lines 7 and 8, Mr. Albo says to Mr. Badalini, "I got $26.50 right now. I mean, ain't that showing something, Garrett?" On January 18th, 2002, did the FBI provide any money to Mr. Albo to make a payment to Mr. Badalini?
Yes, we provided him, I believe, a partial payment of this. That was.
I'm going to object just to the statement that the payment was to Mr. Badalini. I think it was clear that
Okay.
the previous statement.
Okay, restate the question.
Not over Mr. Badalini.
We're jumping up ahead a little bit, but later that day on January 18th, after this conversation was recorded, did the FBI provide money to Mr. Albo?
We did, provided approximately $500 to him.
And did he have some money of his own at that time?
He did. From his own pocket, he paid approximately $2,000 combined with the $500 we gave him, and he made a payment on the debt.
So the total payment that Mr. Albo made was approximately $2,650.
Correct.
And to your knowledge, who did Mr. Albo give that payment to on January 18th?
I believe it was
Objection,
very.
Your Honor, unless he's present.
Yeah, Your Honor,
Sustained.
we'll play the next tape. That'll resolve that. Back to the tape we just listened to. Calling your attention to page 3, approximately line 22 through 25. Before that, in line 17, Mr. Albo says, "I got 1,000 a week." And then Mr. Badalini says, "Every effing Friday, be down here with 1,000. 15 effing weeks now." After this conversation was made, did the FBI provide periodic payments to Mr. Albo to make payments?
We did initially to Albo, and then subsequently, within a matter of weeks, to Undercover Agent Stone.
And what was the amount of those payments?
$1,000 typically.
Now, at the bottom of page 3, Mr. Albo says, "You're not going to tax on 15 weeks."
Your Honor, I'm going to object at this point. The government is simply rereading the transcripts, and the agent has been placed on the stand for a very limited purpose. He can testify as to what happened after this recording, but to reiterate what's exactly is in that conversation is inappropriate and is not what we discussed.
Your Honor, it's exactly what I discussed.
Well, restate the question.
We also said it wasn't being offered for the truth, Your Honor, and so to reiterate based on that is
Okay, that's noted.
Your Honor, I need to focus. I need to draw the agent's attention to the words I want him to explain. So that's.
Okay, what are the words?
You know, Mr. Albo makes the statement, "You're not going to tax that on 15 weeks," and Mr. Badalini says, "I am effing now." Do you have an understanding of what the word tax means?
Yes, tax is an interest on top of the principal.
That's that guy's statement, which is not supposed to be introduced for the truth of it.
I'm sorry?
Some guys should object.
Are you?
Objection, Judge, because that's not supposed to be introduced. Whatever Alba says is not supposed to be introduced for the truth of it. So why are they interpreting what he said?
Well, that one has nothing to do with the other. It's not for the truth of the matter.
Then
It'd be if it was a foreign word, if it was au revoir, and somebody then explained what that meant. It doesn't mean that's for the truth of the matter. It's just to the context and meaning of that particular word. But I reiterate to the jury that what Mr. Alba says is not being introduced for the truth of the matter. That is, you may not consider it as substantive evidence in the case.
Sure. Thank you. Now, let's move forward. The next conversation for the record is dated January 18th, 2002. Also on January 18th, 2002. This time of this conversation is 6:41 p.m. For the record, the tape recording is identified as Exhibit 1-34. The transcript is identified as 1-34A, and the transcript is behind tab 34. Do you have that, Agent?
I do.
Can you play that recording, please?
That for you? What? What? That all for you? Got it. All right, babe. See you later. All right.
Agent Augustine, are you able to identify the voices in that conversation?
Peter Albo and Tracy, who was daughter of Mr. Badalini.
Objection, Your Honor. It says right there, last name unknown. Clearly didn't know.
Lack of foundation as well, Your Honor.
Yeah.
Agent Augustine.
Let me see a sidebar here. Okay, let's proceed, please.
Thank you. Agent Augustine, did you meet with Mr. Albo on January 18th at approximately 6 p.m. in the evening?
I did, in order to give him a recorder, yes.
And did you give him anything else at that time?
I gave him the $500, which he took with him.
Did you observe any money on Mr. Albo's? Did you observe Mr. Albo with any money?
Yes,
Did you count the money that he had?
I did not, no.
After this recording was obtained, did you take any steps to identify who the speakers on this recording were?
I did,
What steps did you take?
talking with one of the parties to the conversation.
Which one?
Your Honor, then the information would be based on hearsay.
Which
Well,
one
we
did-
haven't gotten there, but I think we're going there.
Which person did you speak to?
Mr. Alba.
Okay. Okay, now at this time we're going to play the next conversation, which is, for the record, is dated January 29th, 2002. The time of the conversation is 3:05 p.m. The conversation is identified as Government Exhibit 1-35. The transcript that corresponds to the recording is identified as Government Exhibit 1-35A. And this transcript is behind tab 35.
Yeah, please. What's up, man? What's up? Yeah, we got the family? Yeah. All right, let me ask you a question. What are you gonna do with this car? I'm talking, I'm gonna pick it up. Huh? I have my tow company, my tow truck guy, come down and pick it up. All right, well, probably towards the end of the week. We're too busy right now, we're all over shit. Call me towards the end of the week and I'll come down and get it. All right, but, they're breaking my bones over here in the lab down there. Yeah, I'll get it out. I'm gonna be out there before Friday. All right, did you put that on the money now, really? Not yet. I'll wait to see him in a little bit. But, you got a long time before you gotta worry about that. All right, then on that. Yeah, I know, I'll talk to him tonight, like I said. Well, tonight, he'll definitely see you tomorrow. He's running around. All right, what's going on in the city? Nothing. Same shit. Nothing new. Same shit. He never died in, he won't know. No, nah. Huh? Nah. I thought he died when I was talking to him, he was dead. Oh, they died for dead, then he fucking, miraculously came back to life. Huh? People miraculously came dead, fucking all the turnaround. Yeah? Yeah, but he's a bad shit. He got used to the arm up. What was that shit all about? I thought he, well, we were going to go to the block, right? When I went to the block with him, he was kind of stupid. You know, remember when I was going to the block with Mickey Wick? He's stupid like a fox. Huh? He's stupid like a fox. Yeah? Yeah? He ain't stupid. Far from it. What do you got to say something to go? Yeah? So, try moving in on the sports and everything. Everyone? Yeah. Hold on there, let me take his call. All right.
Agent Augustine, are you able to identify the speakers on that recording?
Yes, I am. That's Peter Albo and Gary Battolini.
Now, calling your attention to page 2, line 13, there's a reference to the name Long John. Do you see that?
Yes, I did.
And there's some conversation afterwards about that?
Right.
Are you able to identify the reference to Long John?
Yes, Long John's a reference to Raymond Martirano, also known as Long John Martirano, who was a made member in the Scarfo LCN crime family. He was...
Objection, Your Honor.
Yeah. Okay. Sustained beyond that.
Now, moving forward, page 3, line 13, the phrase "moving in on the sports." Are you able to interpret what those words mean? Sports.
sports would be a reference to sports bookmaking and gambling.
At this time, we will play the next recording, recording is dated February 1st, 2002. The time of the recording is 11:45 a.m. The recording is identified as Government Exhibit 1-36. The transcript is identified as 1-36A, and the transcript is located behind tab 36.
Hello? Yeah, Chief. What's up? You called me? Yeah, well, I want to know what's going on. What? What? What'd you call me? Didn't you call me last this Friday? Yeah, you called me before that. All right, well, listen. Yeah, well, here's the thing. I got most of the money together. I'm setting up the rest. All right? I mean, I'll be down tonight, just, They're making it up. They're not into that to nobody. When I'm a parent, I can't get in touch with your son. Your son, I let your son money out of my construction company. I got a big deposit for a job, and he owes me this money, and I gotta have the money back for, there's gonna be some kind of. Okay, but again, listen, if this kid is willing to fucking come down here, and if I find this kid, nothing's gonna happen as long as he sells up the money, right? Yeah, nothing at all. But I know these people
Agent Augustine, are you able to identify the voices in that recording?
Yes, Peter Albo, Gary Battolini.
Now, calling your attention to page 2. Line 4. Mr. Battolini makes reference to the phrase original figures. Are you able to interpret what that phrase means?
Figures meaning balance of his debt.
And then in the next line, line 4, Mr. Battolini uses the phrase "your percentages." Are you able to interpret what those words mean?
Yeah, his percentage of the profit-sharing arrangement.
Whose percentage would that be?
Pete Albo's percentage.
Now, calling your attention to line 10 and 12, Mr. Battolini says 13.9 plus the 20-some hundred. When we played the tape recording at number tab 1-34, that was dated January 19th. You testified about you gave Mr. Albo $500 and you observed that he had some money, cash of his own, correct?
Correct.
What happened? What did Albo do after you gave him the $500? What did you observe him do?
He combined it with his own money.
And did he go anywhere after that?
Deli on the Avenue, too.
And who is the owner of the deli on Avenue number 2?
At that time, it was Gary Battolini.
And did you meet with Mr. Albo after he went to the deli on the Avenue 2?
I did.
Did he have the money that you gave him at that time?
No, all he had was his recorder, which he turned back over to me.
So did he have the money that you saw him possess before you gave him the $500?
Objection leading, Your Honor.
Well, they haven't provided a foundation for that. Was he searched?
Yes. When you, as part of your investigative process, after you send a cooperating witness in to record a target, do you search them for money, contraband, and other materials?
Yes.
Did you do that with Mr. Albo?
Yes.
And when he came back from going to the deli on the Avenue, did you search him?
Yes.
And did you find any cash on him?
No.
Now, back to the recording at tab 136. Calling your attention to page 3, lines 24 through 26. Mr. Battolini makes a reference to Stevie, and then also says Stevie's in jail. Are you able to identify the reference to Stevie at that portion of the conversation?
Yes, Stephen Mazzone.
And at the time of this conversation, which is dated February 1st, 2002, was Stephen Mazzone in jail at that time?
Yes, he was.
Now, turning to page 4, the top the page, line 1, Mr. Battolini uses the phrase "the book." Are you able to interpret that phrase, "the book"?
Yes, that's a reference to illegal sports book.
Now, in the earlier conversation, there was a statement by Mr. Battolini that he went to Summers Point. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And in this conversation, there's a reference, several references to Tuckerton.
Right.
Your Honor, objection. It's far beyond what's been permitted through this witness. Now he's referencing previous conversations and asking me to summarize.
Overruled. I think that we have to hear the next question.
The prior conversation was one that we played in the courtroom this morning, correct?
Yes.
Okay. What was, going back to Albo's his presentation of this person, Vinny, who was actually Special Agent Jay Stone, correct?
Correct.
What was the undercover explanation for where Mr. Vinny or Jay Stone was residing?
Objection, Your Honor.
It's sustained.
Okay, back to the transcript behind tab 36. If you go to page 7, line 3, between lines 2 and 5, in that portion of the conversation, Mr. Battolini used the phrase kicked upstairs. Are you able to interpret what that phrase means, kicked upstairs?
Yes, kicking up or kicking upstairs means sharing a percentage of your proceeds, your profits, forwarding them up to your supervisors, up the chain of command.
Now, calling your attention to lines 11 through 14. During that portion of the conversation, Mr. Battellini used the phrase, a book on the street for numbers. Are you able to interpret that phrase?
Yes, a reference to a daily number or an illegal daily lottery.
Now, continuing on page 7, calling your attention to lines 23 through 25. During that portion of the conversation, Mr. Battellini used the phrase, putting it out there. Are you able to interpret what that phrase means?
Putting it out there or putting out money on the street for a street loan.
Now, on calling your attention to page 8, line 24, Mr. Albo makes a reference to Gerard Estates, and then later on, at page 10.
Objection, is there a question?
Yeah. What is the question?
There's two references I'm asking.
To Gerard Estates?
The Gerard Estates, correct.
Okay.
There's a reference on page 8 by Mr. Albo to Gerard Estates, and then on page 10, Mr. Battellini also makes a reference to Gerard Estates. Are you able to identify the reference to Gerard Estate?
Yes, it's a neighborhood in South Philadelphia.
At this time, the government will play the next recording, which is identified for the record as a tape recording dated February 1st, 2002, at approximately 6:40 p.m. The recording is identified as Government Exhibit 1-37. The transcript is 1-37A, and that is behind tab 37. Agent Augustine, are you able to identify the speakers in that conversation?
Yes, Peter Albo and Gary Battellini.
Now, calling your attention to page 2, line 6, Mr. Battellini uses the name Sheep.
Right.
Do you recognize that? Are you able to identify that reference?
Sheep is a nickname for Louis Beretta.
On line 9, Mr. Battellini uses the phrase, he went away. Are you able to interpret that phrase?
Went away is a common way of saying somebody's in jail or in prison.
Now, this recording was made on February 1st, 2002. Do you know where this recording was made?
Yes, I do. It was Deli on the Avenue, too.
Okay. Did you meet with Mr. Albo before he went to Deli on the Avenue number 2?
I did, yes.
Did you provide him with anything?
A recorder and $1,000 cash.
To your knowledge, did you observe Mr. Albo go to the Deli on the Avenue number 2?
Yes, typically I would be in the area. I wouldn't be right on the street to physically see him go in, but I'd be in the immediate area.
And did you meet with Mr. Albo after you left the Deli on Avenue 2?
I did,
And did you search in accordance with your investigative protocol?
yes.
And did he have $1,000 that you had provided to him?
No.
At this time, we will play the recording identified for the record as a recording dated February 8th, 2002. The time of the recording is at 5:55 p.m. No, I'm sorry. I stand corrected, John. That's the one we discussed. We're not going to play that one.
You're not going to play 138.
We're not.
Okay.
We're skipping 138, so do not review the tab behind the transcript behind tab 138. The next recording was dated February 14th, 2002. For the record, the time is 2:35 p.m. The recording is identified as Government Exhibit 1-39. The transcript that relates to this recording is 1-39A, and the transcript is behind tab 36 in Book 1. We may listen to that tape now.
But I want to know one thing, Jack. You're going to make sure I get my money back, right? Yeah.
Agent Augustine, are you able to identify the speakers on that recording?
Yes, that's Peter Albo and Gary Battolini.
And is it correct that recording was made on February 14th, 2002, correct?
That's correct.
What, if anything, happened the next day, February 15th, 2002?
Albo introduced Agent Stone to Gary Battolini on the 15th of February.
To your recollection, did Agent Stone make a payment to anybody on that day?
He did.
What was the payment?
I believe it was one.
This was testified to by Agent Stone.
Was he present?
No.
Yeah, Your Honor, he was present in the courtroom when Stone testified.
Okay, sustain.
Take a look at the transcript behind tab 40. For the record, this is a conversation that was played through Agent Stone. I'm not going to play it here, Agent Augustine, but does that transcript correspond to your knowledge of when the undercover agent Jay Stone was introduced to Gary Battolini?
Yes, it does.
Do you recall? Do you know where that introduction took place?
That occurred at Delhi on the Avenue 2.
Okay. All right, at this time we'll play a tape recording identified, dated March 1st, 2002. The time of the recording is 7:30 p.m. The recording is identified as Government Exhibit 1-41, and the corresponding transcript is 1-41A. And the transcript is behind tab 41.
Hey, Pete. We're good? Pete, yeah, hold on. Yeah, man. Nah, I gotta go, man. All right, what's that? Well, what? We still right? For who, huh? Who's the for? Huh? No. For her or me? Columbia updating again for how long? And what else? Okay. All right, bud. Yep. Hold on. Lou. Yeah. You got time to talk? Yeah, what's up? I listen. I was gathering the money was going on with this whole thing with the money on. Right. Okay. The exact total numbers I still didn't get to come in the cash. Right? You hear those? Lou? Hey. Lou? Lou? I hear you. All right, this fucking phone on the cell phone. All right, listen. The first 5,600 that you got came from my pocket. Right. Okay? Now, this kid, been showing up with the money and getting Gary the money off. The reason why I'm calling you is to ask you if I can get a little bit of my money back. Not yet. You gotta make sure you get everything down here first. You put me in a giant spot because, I don't hold this work. I move it around. I move numbers off this work. You gotta understand that. Mm-hmm. Everybody thinks I'm a millionaire over here. I have worked my whole life, 2 and 3 jobs. When you put in 500 and 800, I gotta give a piece away. I only have to commit to that one. Right. I'm not trying to bust your balls, I'm just being honest with you. How much you need? I don't understand. Well, I was just wondering if I can get the next 2 payments to know, I mean, get the 8 or 9, and you take a week, and then give in 2 more weeks, you can take them. But, you know, can't you do that? You make a deal for $1,000 a week, and now 5 weeks are in, you want to call them. I understand you can, but we all are. All right, but I mean, I would love to take you. I don't have a problem with you at all personally. You know what I'm trying to say? But I got to run this thing like a business. You got to understand that. All right, I mean, he's your wife. I got to run this like a fucking business. I can't sit back and hold all this work. They got to edit the houses and stuff. They want their money know, it's just that simple. Remind you, right? That's, you know, I understand it hurts you, but get through some more weeks before we do that and anything like that. You know? All right. All right? All right, so when comes to work again? Huh? When can I give you work again? Whenever you want. Just gotta protect yourself and me. I like you taking it from me, understand? I gotta protect yourself, live up, guys. Let me see all the things. If you're stuck on a Sunday, maybe we can week on basketball Sunday. If you're stuck fucking 24, you gotta continue to eat. If you can't say, I want 2,000 again. Right. Yeah, okay. All right. Thank you, Lord. All right.
Agent Augustine, can you identify the voices on that recording?
That is Pete Albo and Louis Beretta.
Now calling your attention to page 1, line 11. At that portion of the conversation, Mr. Beretta says Columbia plus 8.5. Are you able to recognize the phrase plus 8.5?
That's points that are being given to Columbia in this case because they're an underdog in a basketball game.
Now calling your attention to page 2, lines 9 through 12. At that point in the conversation, Mr. Beretta is speaking, and he uses the phrase, I move it around, I move numbers off this work. Are you able to interpret what the phrase, I move it around, means?
He's talking about moving sports bets around to different betting houses.
And then in that same conversation, Mr. Beretta uses the word work. Are you able to interpret what that phrase means, work?
Work is bookmaking.
And continuing down, lines 14 through 18, Mr. Beretta uses the phrase, when you put it in. Are you able to interpret what that phrase means, put it in, put in, when you put in?
Putting in bets.
And then in the next line, he uses the phrase, putting in 5 and 800. Are you able to interpret the terms 5 and 800?
$500 and $800 bets.
And then in the same line, Mr. Beretta uses the phrase, I give a piece away. Are you able to interpret that phrase, give a piece away?
Piecing away means edging off sports bets to other betting houses.
Now, calling your attention to page 3, line 15. Mr. Beretta makes a reference to the name Stevie. Are you able to identify that reference?
Yes, it's Steve Mazzone.
Now, calling your attention to page 4, lines 17 through 19. Mr. Beretta makes a statement, I mean he's away. Is it correct that as of the date of this conversation, which is March 1st, 2002, was Stephen Mazzone still in jail at that time?
Yes, he was.
And then in that same portion of the conversation, Mr. Beretta says, hold all this work. He actually says, I can't hold all this work. Are you able to interpret that phrase, hold all this work?
Again, there he's referring to taking bets, and basically he's not able to take all the bets himself. He's got to piece some of it off to other sports bettors.
Calling your attention to page 6, line 8. Again, Mr. Beretta uses the phrase, I'm taking your work, and he repeats that phrase at line 12 by saying, taking work that's good. Are you able to interpret that phrase, work, in that context?
Work, again, means sports bets.
Now, a couple points in the conversation. Calling your attention to, well, actually, I'll withdraw that question. Calling your attention to page 8, line 12, line 4 and 4 through 7. Again, Mr. Beretta uses the phrase edge sum. Are you able to interpret what that word means in that context?
Edging means taking a portion of the sports bets he's receiving and placing those bets with another betting house.
And at the bottom of the page, Mr. Beretta, lines 17 through 20, he makes a reference to $3 a game, and then on line 19 he makes a reference to threes. Are you able to interpret those terms in that context?
He's referring to $300 bets.
Your Honor, that concludes my...
Okay. Well, let's take our morning recess. It's 11:15. We'll resume at 11:20. Please do not discuss the matter among yourselves or with anyone. Leave your materials here in the courtroom. We'll see you at 11:20.